Yo, I want to talk to you guys about the 49ers. We're doing these weekly contract breakdowns and speculations. So today we're going to be talking about the 49ers. Before we get into it, I first want to talk about Deshaun Watson. Uh, there's been some rumors going around. Actually, it's turned into more news than rumors at this point that he's unhappy with his current situation. And the expectation actually starting to become that he's not going to be playing for the Texans next year. So let's talk about a little bit. Deshaun, he just signed a 4-year, $156 million contract. He signed that in September of 2020. $39 million per year is what that means. I'm not going to get into what he's unhappy about. I mean, you can read the rumors, but there's quite a few things that are listed. But he's unhappy, and it's public knowledge. So we do know that Watson has a no-trade clause, and he would essentially control his own destiny. The Dolphins are a team that's rumored. They have a favorable cap situation. I assume if they traded Tua plus a few picks, that might do it for Watson. But beyond that, I'm not going to speculate too much. I'll obviously update you guys as news comes out about it. But it's something we'll be following, obviously, throughout the entire offseason. So, like I said, today we're going to jump right into some contract speculation. First, we're going to talk about 8 free agents for the 49ers this year. We're only going to talk about a few of them, but the 8 notable ones that you guys need to know about, I'll list them off for you. Tevin Coleman, Kendrick Bourne, Jerick McKinnon, Jordan Reed, Ross Dwelley, Nick Mullins, Jeff Wilson, and JaMycal Hasty. Those are all the offensive players that I deemed necessary to at least keep our eyes on throughout the offseason. So we'll keep an eye on all of them. The ones I want to talk about today, though, first, we're going to talk about Tevin Coleman. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's 27 years old. He just finished a 2-year, $4.25 million per year contract. There was a lot of hope coming into 2020. Actually, he signed in 2019. So 2019, 2020, there was a lot of hope for this contract. I mean, it's pretty cheap for a running back of his talent. 2019 was a little less disappointing than 2020, but 2020 was just rough. He had a lingering injury. He actually aggravated it twice throughout the year, and he was really unable to stay on the field after that first injury. So he's an unrestricted free agent, like I said, coming into 2021. Spotrac has his calculated market value at $3.3 million. I tend to agree with that. I think he'll make somewhere around that number, between $3 and $4 million. So we'll just keep an eye on him. It's hard to say if I expect him to come back to San Francisco next year. We'll just have to wait and see. And I'll keep you updated as soon as we get some news on it. Next up, we have Kendrick Bourne. He's also an unrestricted free agent. He's 25 years old. He just finished a 1-year, $3.26 million per year contract. I like the talent that Bourne has. I always have. We just haven't seen the high volume that he really needs to become a top tier, even a wide receiver 2 or 3, because he hasn't even been those, to be honest with you. The emergence of Ayuk and Debo, and then obviously Kittle's return coming up next year, he's going to be relegated to low volume once again, like he has been for the past few seasons. So unless he signs with a new team, I'm hopeful that if he signs with a new team, he could take over that wide receiver 2 or 3 spot. Hopefully wide receiver 2. I think he has the talent to, depending on where he lands. But as far as his contract, I look for around 2 years, $3 million per year, pretty similar to what he signed on his last contract. And then the 49ers running backs, there's a lot of them, so we'll see how that shakes up. In my article, I talk about McKinnon, Wilson, and Hasty. I'm not going to get into talking about them right now. You can read the article and see everything I talked about. But I do want to give you a trivia question. If you've read the article already, then you know the answer. But the question is, so Jerick McKinnon, he was the 7th running back drafted in the 2014 NFL Draft. 7th running back. There were 6 taken ahead of him. Name the only running back that was drafted ahead of McKinnon that has had a successful career. And this isn't like a majorly successful career, but this is the only running back that could even qualify as being close to having a successful career. So think on that, and then check the article for the answer if you haven't read yet. So we're going to jump into our contract breakdowns. So this week I did a blind contract comparison. So let me pull up my article and we can go through this. See if you can guess who the player is, see who you think you would like. Let me scroll through. Okay, so here it is. Here's my article. Who would you rather own in Dynasty Owner? So we'll go through it right now. Player A or player B? Alpha is 22 years old, makes a little over $3 million per year. 3 years remaining on his contract, and you can see his fantasy points there, a little under 200. Bravo, age 23, a little less than 3 million, 2 years left, and 212 fantasy points. So overall, pretty similar. Very comparable, as I note here. They're both wide receivers. I think you can probably guess that from their contracts. Maybe not, but that's probably a good guess, especially for the fantasy points that they're putting up. It's also a safe bet that Alpha was a rookie last year, while it's also safe to assume that Bravo was a rookie in 2019. The numbers probably wouldn't work out any other way, that they could have not been rookies. So that's a little helpful for deciding who it is. And then what I did was took a look at their raw numbers just so you can see what that is. Sometimes that can sway people. So you can see Alpha, 96 targets, 60 receptions. A little low on the yards for the number of receptions, 12.4 yards per reception, but 7 total touchdowns is very helpful. Bravo, 118 targets, 66 receptions. That catch percentage is very low. Almost 1,200 yards. Yards per reception is very healthy, 18.1, and 4 total touchdowns. So maybe a little low, maybe right on average, but definitely not as much as Alpha. So it looks a little better for Alpha, obviously, with the touchdowns. However, the question remains, who would you rather own? You know that Bravo has one less year on his contract. Even given that, I'd probably still take Bravo. I mean, it's close. That extra year is pretty valuable. But like I said, it's close. So let me give you one more stat here. Bravo missed 1 game last season. So you're thinking, wow, it looks pretty good. It's looking better for him. Well, what I haven't told you yet is that Alpha missed 4 games due to injury. So obviously it's not good that, he had some injuries. I don't like to consider players injury prone, but he did miss four games due to injury. So you got to take that into account. But if he hadn't, this is what both of their full seasons would have looked like had neither of them missed any games. And you can see that the numbers get quite a bit closer. Targets are right on track. Receptions, 10 away. That's kind of negligible. It can fluctuate throughout the season. Yards are still going to go to Bravo just because he put up so many in his 15 games he played. Yards per reception obviously remains unchanged for doing the average. And then total touchdowns is skewed a little bit further towards Alpha. Either way, pretty close. I would consider them very close players. So let me show you who they are with this little banner here. So Alpha is Brandon Ayuk and Bravo is DJ Moore. So like I said, I think I would tend, especially knowing who they are now, I would definitely pick Moore. But before this, it's close. I would probably have taken Moore either way, even losing that 1 year. But it's very close. And that just speaks to how quietly dominant Ayuk was last year. A very quiet season. Nobody really, maybe towards the end of the season, but definitely during the beginning, nobody was talking about him, and he was still putting up average games when he was healthy. So he's not as much of a value. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Chase Claypool, they outperformed him, and I'm predicting they will next year as well. And it's also misleading. Kittle's coming back next year, so maybe they'll take away some of the volume. I don't know. I think that the sophomore leap that he's going to take, or that he should take, is going to outweigh, Kittle's return in the volume. So obviously hold on to him. And then I mentioned at the end, if you don't have him, I'd be willing to pay 2021 high second for him. I'd probably be willing to go a little bit more than that, maybe a late first, but mix and match and see what you can do to try to obtain him. Up next, we have George Kittle. He's going to be our second and last contract we're talking about. So when I talk about Kittle, he's 27 years old. He was set to be a free agent after he finished his 4-year contract worth a little under $700,000 per year. But we all know he signed a 5-year, $75 million contract in August of 2020. So he's the highest paid tight end in the NFL. That's going to make it a little bit tougher for us to keep him. We also know that Kittle missed half of his games last year. So let's assume, I know it's not always going to do that, but let's assume that he would have played all of his games last year and kept the same production during every game. This is what his pace for the last 2 seasons would have been. Completely healthy pace. And it's almost identical, as you can see here. 253 fantasy points to 250. That's extremely consistent. So obviously we know he's extremely consistent. That's why we draft him as a top 2, top 3 tight end each year. And then I went ahead and compared him to his peers. So you compare him to his peers and you can see all the contract breakdown. And he's never going to be in the top dynasty dollar per fantasy point. That's just, with a salary that high, it's just never going to happen. You can see that Darren Waller is clearly the better value. And that's not going to change as long as Waller has half the contract that Kelsey and Kittle do. But just because he's not a dynasty dollar per fantasy point value doesn't mean he's not a value in general. I mean, what you're getting at that position that is so scarce already, it's invaluable for both him, and Kelsey. Waller is on a different level. I mean, he's not going to get as many fantasy points you can see here as Kelsey and a healthy Kittle, especially next year as he's coming back, hopefully completely healthy. But he's still an amazing value. And I kind of mentioned that here at the end. It's the last thing I want to say is when you compare, so say you compare a Kittle to a Thielen, they make about the same amount of money. So say Thielen made $15 million per year. The value you're getting from Kittle is astronomical compared to Thielen. I mean, Thielen's a good player, but he's a wide receiver. He can be replaced. Kittle cannot be replaced. That tight end position is just irreplaceable aside from, 3 or 4 tight ends that you have. So that's something you think about when you're thinking about if you're going to keep him or drop him. I think you need to try to do everything you can to hold on to Kittle, Kelsey. It's just the leg up you get from every other team is it's invaluable. It really is. So I appreciate you watching the video. Make sure you follow us at Dynasty Odor on Twitter, and then continue to look out for all of our videos and articles. My articles get released on Wednesdays along with our videos. So we hope that you enjoy all the content that we're bringing, and stick around with us. I appreciate it, guys. Hope you all take care.